Welcome to the Savvy Dentist podcast with Dr. Jesse Green, the show where great dentistry meets great business. Listen in each week as we bring you an inspiring person who will share their story, ideas and business techniques to help you create a practice and a life you love. And now introducing your host, Dr. Jesse Green.
Hi everyone, it's Jesse Green here. Welcome back to SavvyDentist.com and to the Savvy Dentist podcast. Now, throughout COVID, there's been an increased amount of attention on the use of virtual assistants and freelancers as we've all had to reimagine how we work. Virtual assistants and freelancers have been around forever. I've been using them myself since about 2008, 2009 to assist me in all sorts of things throughout my business journey. But of course, as we've moved to the new normal, as it's being called throughout COVID, we're looking at the way that we work and we're understanding that there is an increased role for the use of an outsourced team. My guest today is the founder of a business called Virtually Yours, the author of a wonderful book called The Outsourcing Secret, and of course, I'm talking about Rosie Shilo. Rosie is an expert when it comes to outsourcing. She has a background herself as a virtual assistant, and she now runs a business that allows business owners and virtual assistants to be able to be paired with one another. She's got some great training in place for those people looking to become virtual assistants, and she's got some great resources for businesses looking to engage with virtual assistants. So as we go through this conversation, you're going to hear a lot about what virtual assistants are, how to use them, how to engage them, how to incorporate them in part of the team, what sort of roles they might be able to fulfill for you in your business. But of course, the list of those roles is endless. It's really only limited by your imagination. So as you go through this interview, I'd like you to really be thinking about what are the things that you're doing that are not the highest and best use of your time? What are the things that you'd rather be doing? Whether it's, revenue generating, or maybe it's freeing up time to think on the business, or freeing up time to spend more time with your family and loved ones, or whatever it is for you. But I guarantee you that every business owner has things that they're doing day in, day out that could be outsourced very effectively. So as you go through this, think about that. And of course, take some notes about what you might like to do if this is appropriate and helpful for you in your business. It's a really fun conversation with Rosie. She's a really good laugh. She's a really smart lady, and I enjoyed this conversation a great deal. So I hope you enjoyed as much as I enjoyed recording it. Here's Rosie. Hi there, everyone. It's Jesse Green here. Welcome back to the show. Today, we're going to be having a conversation around the use of virtual assistants. In the world that I hang around in and have been hanging around in for some years now, virtual assistants and freelancers have been part of my world since, 2008, 2009, thereabouts. But I'm really aware that there's a growing interest and a growing need for dental practices and dental practice owners to seek some form of outsourced help. So my guest today is Rosie Shilo, and she runs an agency called virtuallyyours.com.au, and she's got some incredible experience in this space, and we're going to be talking to her for the next half hour or so. So Rosie, thank you so much for coming on our show. It's great to have you here. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited. Oh, me too. It's going to be great. And I wanted to ask you, we were talking off air a little bit, virtual assistants, freelancing has been around forever. Obviously, you've been in that space longer than I have been. Mm-hmm. And it feels like we're just welcoming some newcomers to the party. Yeah. So, what happened before the newcomers came in stays with before them, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. It's a whole new party now. Totally. And I think this year in particular, because of, what's going on with COVID and everything like that, it's like everyone, it's the same with the software that we're using right now. Everyone's like, hey, have you heard about virtual assistants? Have you heard about Zoom? Have you heard about all these things that we've actually been tapping into for since the internet started, pretty much. Yeah, it's really interesting. Someone said to me the other day, Zoom is really amazing. I'm quite new to it. I'm going, really? It's been around forever. But again, I guess it's just the circles you hang out in, the worlds you operate in, and that's totally exactly. Cool too. I wanted to just start at the very beginning because there'll be people listening to this podcast who perhaps are familiar with what virtual assistants can and do, and there'll be others that are not familiar with that. And so I wanted to just, make the case for why someone might consider an outsourced solution and then what that might look like typically. Could you just give us a bit of an overview of what is a VA and why you might consider having a VA?
I'd love to. So since, as you said, the industry's been around for a long time, but it's evolved immensely during that time purely because, as you know, the software and the technology that's available to us has evolved. So what we can offer has grown and changed. So you've got services now that you can offer that you couldn't have offered back, when I first started. For example, social media, podcasting, different services that just, weren't around back then. But now there is just so much that's accessible to us. And this is really great for business owners because business owners go into business to do what they love and to have freedom and to have meaning and to have money and, have these choices. But often it ends up being, becoming a bit of a ball and chain, and they're working during the day on their business and then they go home at night and they're slaving away doing all the, bits behind the scenes to make sure that everything's okay. And it's achieving the opposite of what they went into it for. And, of course, you can't be amazing at all of those different things. You should be amazing at one thing and have the right people, ploughing through the stuff that is not your strength and not your passion.
Yeah, so again, I think that's absolutely true. We use that expression, doing dentistry by day and running the business by night, and it's not an uncommon tale for practice owners to be trying to work all day to generate the revenue, and then of course bookkeeping needs to be done, social media scheduling needs to be done. Someone told me to write a blog, so now I've got to do that as well, and all of those things kind of mount up, and the to-do list gets so long it's kind of off the desk and out the door and around the corner kind of routine, and then quick as a flash, nothing happens. So let's talk a little bit about what a virtual assistant actually is, because again, you and I understand that intuitively. We're quite familiar with that, but again, our audience may not be. So could you just give us a bit of an overview of what a virtual assistant is, what they do? I know the tasks we'll get to in a minute, but how do they operate?
So in Australia, virtual assistants are independent contractors and they're providing business-to-business services. So any sort of service that can be provided virtually by a contractor falls under the virtual assistant industry classification, in my eyes anyway. So what was the second half of the question?
I guess, how do they operate? They're obviously working from home, logging in remotely, all those sorts of things.
Yeah, everything's online pretty much. So one of the things that can be quite a turn-off is the fact that everything's online. So if you're not feeling like there's security in that, there actually is a lot of strategies that virtual assistants implement to make sure that things are safe. So you can share passwords, for example, to your bookkeeping system or your CRM without actually sharing the passwords. There's software that you can say, here, give this person access, but don't show them the passwords. And so you can revoke access really, really easily. And then you've got programs like this where you can have conversations with your team members. You've got programs that you can manage all your tasks and your projects. And so they would be doing the work from home that, you would usually see an admin or an office manager or your web developer doing in-house if you had this massive business, but they're just doing that from home and they're able to, actually submit it through to you and communicate with you online.
Yeah. And so one of the things I've found really helpful with virtual assistants over the past is it gives you access to a greater talent pool, high quality talent at a fraction of the price generally.
Yeah.
A lot of people would be familiar or perhaps familiar with the idea of offshore virtual assistants, whether it's Filipinos, Indian, people in whatever country. And sometimes that's great. And other times you need and want a local to be able to do certain things, particularly if it's a customer-facing role. And so can you just talk us through where you see having a locally based virtual assistant versus an offshore virtual assistant? What are the trade-offs? What are the pros? What are the cons? How does that look? How does that feel?
Okay, so with offshore, usually they're an employee or they are running a small business, but the approach to their work is quite different. So I talk about the employee versus business owner mindset quite often. So the working with someone who's waiting for work to be put in front of them versus someone who is proactive about getting work and supporting you and strategizing is one of the differences between the two. That's one. If you're not getting that from your Australian virtual assistant, they need to up their game. So when I'm training virtual assistants in Australia, I've said to them, you need to be stepping up, because if you're just sitting there waiting for work to fall in front of you and you're not strategizing, thinking about ways for this business to grow and streamline their systems, then you're no different to offshore. So they usually come to the party understanding how to run a business, understanding how personal that can be and how hard it is to let somebody come in and see the back end of your business, which can sometimes be quite messy.
Mm-hmm.
And looking at ways, here, there's a dental thing coming up, a networking opportunity. Here's the local thing you can tap into. Here's a marketing opportunity. Hey, we can do this with your social media. You're not going to get that offshore, which is why it's so much cheaper. So those are two key differences in delivery in terms of why you would be paying more onshore. But I say to VAs, if you're not delivering that on top of the services that you're offering, then, what's the difference? But you've got the legal aspects as well, and the privacy and the confidentiality. You don't have any of that for offshore. They can take your IP, they can do whatever they want with your documents, and good luck to you trying to take any legal action on that. Whereas, obviously, if they're in Australia and you're in Australia, you've got to abide by the same laws.
Yeah.
So you would have privacy and confidentiality agreements with them, but also if they did breach any kind of IP law, you could take them to town. So that's a nice little bit of security there as well.
Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting point around the security thing, but also the initiative part as well, because I think one of the things that as business owners we're all looking for is initiative. We want people with initiative, people with get up and go, who, as you say, are not waiting for work to fall in their lap, but they're looking at ways they can add value to the business. And sometimes, again, you might be paying for 10 hours worth of work, but if the work's done in 6 or 7 hours, what else can we do with that time to add value and move the business forward? And the very best people I've ever worked with in that space have always ended up getting more and more hours because they're able to find things that were useful and valuable and so on and so forth. So I really, really resonate with that. Thank you. I've just had my mouth suddenly go really dry. We were talking offline about how Aussies manage to butcher words quite easily, and I just had a classic example on my own podcast. Oh, goodness me. If this makes it to the final edit, folks, you'll know that I'm suddenly feeling all right about it. What I wanted to ask you, though, Rosie, is if we were to talk about tin tax and go, okay, what sort of tasks might a virtual assistant undertake for a dental practice? Because, in the work that I do here at Savvy Dentist, we've got a virtual assistant who does, social media scheduling, creation of images for blogs using Canva, all those sorts of things. But obviously there's a heap of things that people can get done for them by virtual assistants. What sort of things do you see your VA is providing for business services?
In particular, if I'm picturing a virtual assistant working with someone who has a dental practice, the things that come to mind are around bookkeeping, social media, as you just said, so creating images, the audience, generating interest, generating conversation, policies and procedures, making sure things are running smoothly and legally, customer management, copywriting. So when they do say to you, you've got to write that blog, like you said earlier, you can go, no worries, I'm going to get, Monique over here to do that for me. And also one of the services that I use that is my absolute favourite, because I'm terrible at doing it myself, is actually reception and phone calls. So I've got a team that actually take all my calls for me, and I love them to pieces because they make me look so good. And then, of course, managing your database. So making sure that you're getting really good value out of the names and addresses and phone numbers that you have, and they're not just sitting there wasting space. There's so much opportunity to connect with your current market. It's easier to keep your current customers than to get new ones. So to nurture those and to make them feel valued and feel like, oh, my dentist actually loves me instead of my dentist wants to hurt me, is a really good way to move forward in your business. And that actually is something that can really add incredible value to the, end of your business budget, really. So
yeah, again, I really like that. I've got
and website.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, sorry.
I've got a client over in Western Australia who's the only other dental practice that I know of who's been involved in virtual assistants. And in preparation for today, I was asking her about what sort of things that her virtual team provide for her. And it was things like, tender loving care calls, TLC calls after a procedure. Are they okay?
Oh,
checking in around this and that, making sure, the recall system is managed, the letters and correspondence are managed, admin stuff such as, forms and tracking of production expenses, all of those sorts of things, and even some personal admin, so personal assistant sort of services as well.
Yeah.
So there's a heap of things, right?
Yeah, there's look, it's endless. I've got someone who did my course recently, and she's one of those people who's magic at looking at your numbers and helping you forecast and plan for, what your actual bookkeeping numbers mean and how you can sit down and go, okay, well, this is what I'm trying to achieve. How are we going to do that based on what's coming in at the moment, what my expenses are, and strategizing around that. And that sort of thing actually gets me really excited to think that somebody can sit down with their magic eyes and look at those numbers and make sense of them and then say to me, hey, if you sold some more of this, or you looked at encouraging this particular client to get this particular service, you can increase your revenue by this amount. So having that strategy rather than just winging it from day to day, because we all know being self-employed, you don't have just this regular, beautiful income coming in. It goes up, it goes down, it goes left, it goes right. So having strategies and having people who understand how to do that is really such a gift.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what my other favourite service is that I use?
What's that?
Graphic design.
Yeah.
All of my stuff. Yeah, all of my documentation, everything that goes on my website, everything that goes to my students, customers, they help me make sure it looks amazing.
Yeah, same with us. Our graphic designer works in Estonia, actually, and so we send work across, comes back, it's great, and doesn't miss a beat. And I guess one of the things that, might come up for people, I guess just as a hurdle that they'd need to overcome, you've already touched on the password thing. So overcoming things, with LastPass or, whatever software you choose to use in that sense.
Yeah.
What are the other hurdles or obstacles that you see small business owners in particular just needing to work their way through before they feel comfortable, engaging someone as a virtual assistant?
Yeah, you definitely need to build the know, like, and trust factor because, you're getting them to, it's one of my favorite quotes that another business owner of mine said was, it's easier to get someone to look after your kids than to get someone to look after your business, which is that's like just so weird. It's like, oh, hey, you're a babysitter. Sweet. Come on in. I'm out of here.
Yeah.
Hey, it's a virtual assistant. Don't look at my baby. Don't look at my business baby because you've created it. It's same with children.
Yeah.
You've had a choice in how it looks and how it behaves. And so you're very, very responsible for that. So, yeah, having to build that know, like, and trust factor. But to do that, I think one of the areas that business owners need to work on is reducing their need to micromanage and increasing their ability to just communicate what their end goal is and not keeping their cards close to their chest in case that person runs off and creates their own dental practice. So actually just sharing, this is where I want to go with my business. This is my dream. This is what I'm looking for, so that the people on your team know when they see that dream come, drive past. If you say to them, I'm looking for a Mazda 3, they're going to see Mazda 3s. But if you say to them, I'm looking for a car, they're just going to see a whole lot of cars.
Yep.
So you need to be specific and communicate where you want to go and be an open book and showcase that you want to be, in a team together. It's not about having someone that you demand things of. Allow them to lead in their area of expertise and share with them what the outcome is that you're looking for.
Again, there's a thread there I'd like to pick up on, Rosie, and that is the part of the team. And one of the things that we've found with our own virtual staff is it's really important for us to see them as team, not as an external appendage to the business, and to make sure that they're integrated into the team. And we use Slack as a communication channel, and we have Zoom, like we're talking on now, all those sorts of things. In your experience, do you find that there are some businesses that are better able to integrate those virtual assistants into the team? So they might be a virtual assistant, but they're still integral to the team. I want to just touch on that point and where you see that, and then how you engender that, and then how you communicate, and what's that look like?
I think what you were saying there about how using Zoom and using Slack and embracing connecting and sharing with each other, the teams that actually schedule that sort of thing in, the businesses that schedule those conversations in, really build that team vibe. So it is a conscious thing that you need to be doing. I mean, I don't have a lot of Zoom chats with my team, but we actually chat pretty much all day online just through Messenger. And so we're sharing stuff with each other, sharing links with each other, saying, you know, today's awesome or today sucks or whatever it is that you need to do to connect, you know, to have that understanding and that support around you. It's not just about them doing the jobs, it's about them being part of your cheerleading squad and you them as well. So it's a bit of a culture that you need to be turned routine, something that kind of is just part of how you run your business. And that does take time and a little bit of probably, you know, a couple of weeks of minor discomfort to then, generate a routine that actually engenders that whole team culture.
Yeah.
Is that what you mean?
It is exactly what I mean, because one of the things that when I first started using outsourced staff is one of the biggest mistakes I made was to not bring them into the team. We'd have this team and then we'd have this contractor kind of sitting off to the side, delivering bits and pieces, and I'd get frustrated that I wasn't getting quite the results that I wanted, in the sense that it was okay. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't great. And what I realized that I had to do, and it took a friend of mine to point this out to me, was to say, you know what, actually they're not a VA, though they are, but they're actually an extension of our team. They're part of our team. They're integral to our team. And therefore, just change that paradigm, change the way I interact, create the structures, as you said, and the routines to be able to communicate. We use Zoom and Slack, but whatever platforms people choose is fine. And then, some project management software so that we know where they're up to with what they're doing, how they're tracking, whether it's, Trello, Asana. Again, we happen to use Teamwork, but, you take your pick and have some sort of structure in there. And it's great.
Yeah. Yeah, you've got to bring them into the fold, because otherwise they're working blindfolded. And they can't read your mind. It's one of the services that we just simply cannot offer. And as much as we'd love to, so you've got to bring them in. And then once they know, and also they'll feel more invested and more valued when they're brought into the fold.
And that's my thinking too. And when they're more invested, more valued, they're going to have that initiative. They're going to get to know the way you think anyway, even though that's not a service you offer. Unfortunately, I think every business owner on the planet would sign up for that. But, the more that you're engaging with your outsourced team, the more they get to know you, the more they understand how you think, the more they're able to help and support you and take that initiative and be on point with it, correct?
Yeah, they'll get to know your strengths and weaknesses too. And that's actually a brilliant thing, because you want them to be able to identify how they can support you with any gaps that you have in your skills or in your knowledge. So the idea of having people on your team is to fill gaps.
Yeah.
So how are they going to know what the gaps are unless they, are part of that conversation?
Yeah. So, okay. So let's say that I'm listening to this podcast and I go, you know what? I have a gap in my team. I know that I want an outsourced solution. I don't have enough of a role to bring someone internal, or I can't get the skill set, or it's not a full-time role, or, whatever, for whatever reason that they decide that they want to have an outsourced team. What's the process of finding, recruiting and onboarding, and if necessary, training someone to bring them in as a virtual team member?
Well, the whole process, I've written a book about the process, so it might take me a while to kind of explain the whole thing. So, but in a nutshell,
starting at page 1, right?
Welcome to my book. I mean, initially, obviously, you need to identify what the gap is.
Yeah.
And so you might even need to speak to a coach such as yourself to identify where things are missing, because sometimes it's hard to see it in your own business. It's hard to work it out. So work out what the gap is, and then what I encourage people to do is to actually visit my website, and we've got a process there where they submit a request for support, and we ask the questions that we need, that base level questions, but enough to have the right sort of skill set VAs, then contact them for a chat. So that's when sort of the onboarding process starts, because you need to have an idea of who you're looking for, who you work well with, and again, what those gaps are. So you might find that even just the way they communicate and their personality styles are important, because you've got a team full of really extroverted, talkative people in your team, and you think, oh, actually, we don't have someone who really thinks that, like, crosses the T's and dots the I's, and we need somebody who's going to be sitting there and doing that while the louder ones are off with their bigger visions. So thinking about those sorts of things, having a conversation with the people that contact you and seeing who you feel like you're starting to have a connection with, who you think you can build that whole know, like, and trust factor with. And then you can start, so you would sign an agreement with them purely to say, we understand this is how the role works, this is what the payment terms are, but start with something small. The thing about a contractor is you can let them go at any time. You don't need to do the whole employee, keep them on for a 3-month probation, and then you can do this and then you can do that. You can just say to them straight up, all right, here's one job that I'd like you to do. And either you love it or you hate it. And so if you love it, then you try a little bit more and you communicate with them about where you're going in your business, and you start to just really build that relationship. So it's a bit of an investment at first, because you need to get to know each other. They should know their service really well and be able to guide you in how to get that outcome, but they still need to get to know what your goals are and how your business runs. So that's that communication is really important at the start.
Yeah, I'm loving that. Are there any traps for young players in that process? I'm sure there's a lot. And I know, just before we get to that, your book is called The Outsourcing Secret. And so, ladies and gents, if you want to get a copy of that book, head across to Rosie's website, which is virtuallyyours.com.au. Grab a copy of the book. But in terms of traps, pitfalls, stumbling blocks, where do people get it wrong?
Thank you for that. You might need to kiss a few frogs before you find your prince or princess, which sucks. And, if that does happen, look, the key thing is to learn, what did I fall for with that? Was it that they had that real energy at the start and seemed excited about it, and then they just completely lost interest? Why did that happen? What was my role in that? Was it a communication thing? Was it a not understanding what keeps them excited and ignited? So it is very much around personalities when you work with other people. So understanding how you can bring out the best in them, and they need to know how they can bring out the best in you. So yeah, it can be very tough sometimes, because you will find people interview well but then don't deliver. So testimonials is really important. Ask for those. You don't ask for a resume because they're not being employed. It's not how it works, but you can get a business profile from them, look at their LinkedIn page and ask for some testimonials just to see what sort of record they have. And then I think the main other trap is around just not, and it's usually more with the business owner than the VA, although VA is a business owner, you know what I mean, is around just not communicating well enough. So you do end up losing, either bringing on the wrong person because you said you're looking for something that isn't actually what you need, that's where that whole coach thing can be really important, to find out what you need, not necessarily what you want, and then making sure that you look at where that person fits in and what their role is between now and when that goal is achieved. So it's so that it's more measurable. You can see that you're actually moving forward towards your goal each week or each month. So having an idea of where, I always say, sit down and look at, where am I now in different areas of my business, and where do I want to be, and then who fits into what section there, in what capacity, to help me move from here to here. So you need to understand what their role is in that. Got
it. Now, I want to ask you, if you would have seen lots of businesses over the years with virtual assistants and so on. When this is done well, what's it look like?
Oh, it's beautiful.
It's symphony. It's poetry in motion.
It's so beautiful when it's done well. I see some people and they are just the most incredible teams, and what they achieve together, they just bring out the strengths in each other. And it's just amazing. You see people when they're working, their teams are cohesive and working well together. You hear and see them because they become powerhouses. It's so awesome. Yeah, that just gets me really excited. Just the idea of it.
Ladies and gents, this is an audio program, but if you could see the video, there's lots of animation going on right now. Yeah, hand movements, everything, the whole thing. All right. So there's lots of upside. And I think what you've shared, I think really elegantly, Rosie, is the fact that there is a process. It's identify the need, look at where you are, where you want to go, look at the need, not necessarily the want. Start researching what sort of roles might be appropriate to bring into your practice. Maybe start with a small project to dip your toe in the water, test that person to build that know, like, and trust factor. Obviously, there's going to be regular communication that needs to be happening, whether that's whatever channels or platforms you choose. Beyond that, is there anything else there that we've missed that you think we need to talk about?
I think one of the issues people have is that they can't afford a virtual assistant, so we haven't tapped into that. I know we said that offshore is cheaper than onshore, but I think it's important to understand why you would be investing in a virtual assistant and what that looks like to you and your business. So for the first part of that, I always ask people to consider what they're worth at their most valuable activities. So when they're working on the thing that brings them in the most money, that is what they want to be focusing their attention on, right, from day to day.
Yep.
So when they're spending their time doing social media management or bookkeeping or that blog writing, they are then reducing their capacity to bring in that kind of money. So having a strategy around, one, understanding that the right person will do it better and quicker, so you're saving twice as much money, and two, making sure that when you are allocating that other work, you're understanding what the benefit, not only the outcome, but financially where you want to be sitting with that. So for me, sometimes I'll outsource the work and I'll go, sweet, this stuff's getting done, I'm paying for that, and I'm going to the hairdressers, right? I'm not going to be actually making more money, but it gives me the opportunity to do something that I want to do.
Yep.
Other times I'm getting them to do the work and I'm sitting there making sure that I'm making up for that by doing my most valuable activity.
Yep.
And spending time doing that, so I'm generating that income. So just having an idea of exactly what, is the benefit allowing to work on your most valuable activity, or is the benefit allowing you to have some more freedom?
Fantastic. Loving that. All right. We've covered a fair bit of stuff, Rosie. Is there anything else you think our audience needs to know about virtual assistants? Actually, I do have one last question, sorry. I was just about to kind of ask you something, but then virtual assistants versus freelancers.
They're the same thing.
Yes, I know. So, well, you hear the language thrown around and some people might assume that they're different. And so, people just need to understand it is the same thing. So, Ladies and gents, if you hear the lingo, the terminology, please understand we are using the words synonymously, and that's cool. So, as we wrap up, Rosie, I wanted to ask you if there's anything that you think that we've missed, if there's anything you think our audience should know about that would be helpful.
I just like to reach out and sort of say to them, if they're feeling overwhelmed and frustrated with their business, there are options out there to make it easier. So, it's important to remember, one of the things I train all my virtual assistants in is to identify what their non-negotiables are that keep them sane and happy and joyful. And it might be as simple as, for me, it's spending time in the garden and doing, murals outside, those sort of things where my obligation is to no one and it brings me joy. I don't have to do it. I don't have to spend a certain amount of time on it. The outcome is purely for me. So I call them my non-negotiables. And I think it's important to identify whether you've got those and you're making time for those, because if you're not, you need to change in my opinion, you need to change the way you're structuring your week. So my family, it's all about communicating with your stakeholders. My family are part of my stakeholder team, and I've communicated with them that if I don't have my non-negotiables, people may die because I will get very grumpy, and then I won't be as good at doing my business. I won't be as good at being a mum, and I generally won't be, as happy. Whereas just half an hour in the garden and it changes the whole way I feel. So everybody has something that does that for them. So I think it's important to identify what that is and make that part of your structure. Communicate it with your team, communicate it with your family. You can say what I say. People may die if I don't do this, so you have to support me to fit it in. It's not an optional extra. It's a non-negotiable.
I know that in our house, it's a fairly well-known fact that if I don't get to watch the football on a Friday night, that it's usually going to end up badly.
There you go.
Yeah, the footy on a Friday night is a thing for me. It's life in the fast lane, ladies and gents. You know, I'm not out raging and partying, but I am watching the footy. You can tell I'm over 40.
I sound like a grandma when I talk about gardening.
Me too. I just got to get my little knee
I'm
rug
actually
out
out there with a chainsaw, just trying to hack into things and rip things up.
Yeah, I'm sitting there watching the footy with a little blanket over my knees and my slippers on. I'm joking.
I love that. Yes.
Dear. Ladies and gents, I would really encourage you to think about virtual assistants, freelancers, whatever language you want to put around that, because there is 101 things that you can get some support for in your practice. Whether it's managing your recall system, whether it's making sure your database is accurately looked after, incomplete treatments followed up, TLC phone calls made, whatever that is, you can get some support around that, because we know that those tasks are really important. We know that your front desk is often dealing with inbound phone calls, patients checking in, checking out, all that sort of stuff. And some of those really important tasks can fall by the wayside. So it's really, really important to ensure they get done. And this might just be something that helps you in that process. So anyway, just food for thought. Rosie, I want to say thank you to you for coming along on our show today. It's been really fun to talk to you. I think we'll have to do this again, and let's do it again and think of some other ways that we can get some virtual assistance and support into these dental practices so they can continue to grow and do what they do best.
I love it. Let's do it.
All right. Thanks so much, mate.
Thank you for listening to the Savvy Dentist podcast with Dr. Jessie Green. For more free tools and resources, join the free Facebook group. Visit drjessiegreen.com/Facebook. And for more episodes, visit drjessiegreen.com/savvydentist.